This is Rebecca Lowe, or Rebecca Lua, if you listen to Suboptimal Radio, and you are listening to Men in Blazers on the NBC Sports Network.
It's unbelievable!
Welcome to a Men in Blazers pod special. Our guest today is the acclaimed writer and creator of some of the most indelible television series of the last 2 decades. Show Me a Hero, Generation Kill, and a show, The Wire, that transcended and transformed television. But his story begins long before he was canonized as one of the patron saints of TV's golden age. Prior to show running and show writing, he was a proper journalist who cut his teeth first at the Tatler, the high school newspaper of Bethesda Chevy Chase High School in suburban Maryland. Come on, you mighty barons! And eventually as a police reporter at the Baltimore Sun. His new series, co-created with longtime collaborator George Pelecanos, is The Deuce, chronicling the rise of the porn industry in Times Square in the 1970s. Yes, that spot was once home to something more than just Guy Fieri Restaurants America. And this series tells that story, starring James Franco, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and a slew of remarkable talents. Gary Carr, wow, just wow. It premieres this Sunday, September 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern, on HBO. We welcome back a man who proudly calls himself the PBS of HBO, hailing from Baltimore, Maryland, or Bodymore, Murderland. Either way, it's the Liverpool of America, the one and only Mr. David Simon.
That's the best intro I've had in 2 days, 3 days. That's excellent.
You
killed it dead.
My work here is done. We're having a Guinness, not quite up to David's liking because he's just come back from Ireland.
No, you've done pretty well here. I'm not drinking Guinness out of a can, and it's America, so I'm very happy.
We sit here on the eve of the release of your latest series, which we'll talk about in a second. But when you've already made The Wire, a television show that's been compared to a great Victorian novel, it's right up there with the likes of MASH, Cheers, Lost. With that achievement already in the David Simon trophy room, you've essentially already won a World Cup with one of the greatest performances a tournament's ever seen before. Does that relieve you of some of the stress when you're poised to release a new series into the world?
I truly don't give a shit anymore. You know, I've reached that point where there are no shits left to be given. And now it's just, if like I'm telling you a story, it's because I think you need to know the story. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
You've answered pretty well every question I was poised to ask you.
And
how's that feel to have reached that moment in life when you have no more shits to give?
I'm just anticipating where you wanted it to go, and now I've landed it there, haven't I?
Let's just sit here for half an hour and drink this beer.
Excellent.
You've reached the state of Zen to which we all aspire. So let's just talk about The Deuce.
Sure, why not?
Sunday night, you knew, and I'll say so myself, quite extraordinary series about the origins of the flesh business on HBO. The show's title comes from New York slang for 42nd Street, follows a time in the early 70s when a motley crew of entrepreneurial pioneers dragged the pornography business out of the smutty brown paper bag, transforming it into a wide-open booming industry. It's a remarkable show to watch. Some classic David Simon textured human storytelling, a lot of mood scenes, awful lot of cigarettes, huge period car budget, and every goddamn last piece of awful wallpaper that you're able to track down in America, I believe.
Yeah, that was brilliant stage direction, wasn't it?
But what made you think this theme, this time, this place is what the world needs to think about right now?
You know, we hadn't done very much on gender politics, and we hadn't done much on misogyny. And after this last election, if you watched what happened, not just to Hillary Clinton, but to every woman who tried to exert an opinion in the public domain. I mean, if you know any female journalists or essayists or novelists who tried to express themselves publicly, and then you look at what lands on them in the comment section, on Twitter, in all the social media, it's astonishing the way that we've learned to talk about and to women, even if you call it anonymously. The way men are talking to women now, you can't tell me that it doesn't have to do with the last 50 years of pornography, of a culture of misogyny and exploitation that has become part of the way that men view women and part of the way in which we're sort of expressed sexually. It's pretty incredible. And so I feel like at this particular moment, although it's sort of never talked about, it's sort of like, well, that's unseemly, let's not talk about that. Might be time to do a reflection on where the last 50 years of the sex trade and sex work and pornography has taken us.
So you decided to travel back up the river to the source as you identified it, the source of objectification, and you tracked it down 2 Times Square.
Whoa. I mean, come on. 15 minutes after the French guy, was Balak or whatever his name was, invented the camera, he was running down the streets of Paris like looking for Parisian prostitutes to take their clothes off. Times Square didn't invent porn. They didn't invent prostitution, obviously. But there came a moment where American culture decided we were going to keep this street legal and we were not going to keep it in the paper bag. And from that moment, you now have a multi-billion-dollar industry that has not only become an economic engine, it's transformed the culture. I mean, we don't sell beer or Lincoln Continentals or blue jeans without using some of the tropes of pornography. It has totally affected the way men view women and the way women know they're viewed. It's ingrained in the culture now. So it seemed like there might be something here to chase.
It's a masterly retelling. You create in painstaking detail an incredible world. Wire fans, Method Man is back in this world. Maggie Gyllenhaal, masterful in this world. James Franco plays twins. Believe an Emmy awaits just for his moustache game.
He's great. Just on the moustache game alone.
Yeah. I mean, have a category. He's over your shoulder right there.
Well, the truth is, like, playing twins, he wanted no cheap help. He wanted, like, no, don't give one of them a scar. No, don't shave the mustache on one. I'm going to do this with acting. And he has. I mean, I think it's beautiful work.
There's a lot of sex.
Is there?
Ton of both breasts and male members. But I should say, the sex is not very sexy.
Thank you.
Which I'm guessing is completely intentional. I read that you said about the porn scenes, your goal was to not shoot sex scenes, but to shoot the shooting of sex scenes.
That's correct. We were very careful not to be prurient or Puritan about it. We wanted to be blunt. We didn't want to cheat and be like, oh, we'll just allude to what pornography or prostitution is. No, I mean, at that point you're on the road to Pretty Woman at that point. No, we wanted it to be blunt about what was being transacted here, what was being commodified. And at the same time, we don't want the camera to linger. We're always aware of that guy who just sits down at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wearing only a towel, ready to watch his HBO show, and screw that guy. The last thing we want is to make a television show for him. We were intent on ruining porn, to the possibility that anybody can ruin porn. We felt like we would try to be those guys.
At the same time, we laughed last time you were on the show that hit television today needs one of, or even more than one, of dragons, zombies, or nudity. Was Deuce, in a way, your compromise of giving us the gangsters, the pimps, the whores, the sex scenes, the nudity, the violence that modern accessible hit television has?
No dragons. I held off.
You did. That's for the sequel.
There's no
for the sequel, the Franco twins riding in 2 Times Square on the dragon.
Dragons.
I don't want a spoiler alert, people.
No dragons.
But you did so giving yourself the opportunity to do your David Simon thing and look at the meta issues: capitalism, corruption, police corruption, anarchy, misogyny, and the abuse of women.
People are going to come in and go, oh, he finally caved in. He did a sex show. The piece before this was about federal housing policy. The piece after this is going to be about legislating on Capitol Hill, which is the broken part of U.S. government. So, yeah, I'm the captain of exploitation.
Legislating on Capitol Hill with zombies, right?
Well, in a matter of speaking, yes. But purchased zombies. Purchased zombies, I will say.
Looking at your show, every scene, it's just got the pacing, the aesthetic, classic golden age 1970s cinema. French Connection, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Pelham 123. I mean, I think of you as a writer who's super realist. You write what you know. Interior, courtroom, daytime, exterior, street corner, night. Did you have to flex a different writing muscle for a period piece like this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was 11 in 1971, so if I recall correctly, I was trying to find my dad's Playboy magazine.
Yeah, I was the equivalent of the man in the towel.
Yeah, that was like, there was no internet. It wasn't at your fingertips. Sex was a mystery, and even if you managed to steal Dad's Playboy, there wasn't enough clues in there to let you off the hook. This was acquiring something, a world. I don't remember the New York of this period, but we do have all that filmic library that you just cited. George Pelecanos, my partner on this, he loves that stuff, and I do too. I mean, it's some of the most magical filmmaking. Everything from Report to the Commissioner, Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver. There's something about it. It was some of the finest assessment of urban America ever done. Our intention, and we communicated this to Michelle McLaren, who directed a wonderful pilot and created our template for us, was, can this be a film that somehow got lost in a vault and somebody found it, but it was shot in 1971? And I think she got as close as you humanly could. I mean, I'm really proud of the piece. There's a film aesthetic here that's important to the delivery of the story.
So you immersed yourself in those films. That was the...
I always loved them, but we watched a ton of them. Everything across 110th Street, all the blaxploitation stuff of the early 70s. It's so magical. It's so beautiful. That was a point at which people didn't think New York was going to be able to save itself, that we were headed for some sort of urban apocalypse. It was a period in which you could be hyperbolic, like Escape from New York, Carpenter's Escape from New York, and it felt like, well, yeah, maximum security prison, Manhattan. Yeah, no, I see us going there. Like it was actually plausible. You look around now and it seems incredibly naive because, of course, the 30-year run-up on Wall Street was, what do we do with the money? Oh, I know. Let's rebuild Manhattan and then some of the outer boroughs. And now, I mean, I come from a city where there's about 240 murders right now in Baltimore. There's 170 in New York. You know how much larger New York is than Baltimore? There's something there that says New York had a completely different future from the rest of urban America. But nobody knew that in 71.
No one. And by the way, I was watching Escape from New York. I'm just listening to you. I realized...
Snake Plissken?
Well, yeah, when I saw that, was like, I was watching Liverpool. I was like, I want to move to that city. That was
I'm not so sure about that.
That is one of
I will not lose myself in nostalgia for the old, if we could only get Disney out of New York, 42nd Street could go back to what it was. I mean, there's a lot of human pain there.
But you can take Guy Fieri. I did adore the score. I really did. And I want to know how you bake that into the show, that sound of 1970s New York, that mix of funk, salsa, street hustle. It comes out of car radios, bury it in coffee shop background music, bar jukeboxes. Every scene, it's a subtle piece of soundscaping.
It is. It's magnificent. And basically, it's easy for us because whenever George Pelecanos walks into the room, that shit follows him. He'll walk into the room and like, damn, Curtis Mayfield, how'd you make that happen? Wherever he walks around in the world, funk and soul.
It just emanates out of him. But you do it all the time. I mean, you integrate some of the best soundtracks in the game. Body of an American by the Pogues, at McNulty's funeral scene, the montage in Show Me a Hero, during which Springsteen's Hungry Heart plays throughout. I mean, can you talk about the marriage of music and visuals? Because you come from journalism, David, a world that's all ink and paper. What's the process through which you integrate sound into your work?
I was a film fan and a music fan, and so is George. The effect that some of this stuff has on us, there's a simple poetry to it. And it's not as if I can direct. I'm usually quite content to stand behind the director and look through the monitor, knowing that I can't add the things that a great director can. But I know when it's going awry. I know when I'm not feeling it. So I can basically I can play a prevent defense of we're not getting it. How we get it, that's why I hired you. I can do that with a director. And I can do that with a music supervisor. And George can as well. And so what we're going for is something that's in our heads that comes from a lot of years of loving film that has nothing to do with film school it's just all storytelling. And there was something about, even though we both came out of prose, there was such great affection for these moments in particularly American film, but also, just film in general, where you would see the power that song and sound and image can drive. It's just incredible.
Does one come to you now when you're thinking that?
Second season of The Wire, where on the final montage we used a Steve Roll piece called "I Feel All Right." There's something so punk and surly about his sensibility of, okay, I'm forgotten. I'm the forgotten person in this narrative. I'm the forgotten person in this world. You've written me off, but I'll be okay. There was something so punk-ass perfect about his tone that when we put it up against those stevedores who were being marginalized, it was poetry.
I love what you were saying about, when you're not feeling it, you bring that outsider ethos to television making. Modern television is formulaic. Franchises are meant to follow patterns.
And it works.
But you say...
That's why they have an audience.
You told me you hate shows where you can, what you call, see the stitchings. And you said that if you learn how to make television the right way, then you're broken for making television the wrong way.
Right.
How did you make the Deuce the wrong way?
There it was kind of different in that you had to walk away from the things that television will sell you without even thinking, which is, if the product is sex, and the product in the Deuce is sex, it's flesh, and if TV and our culture is so good at selling sex, then I have to walk away from the idea of that any moment of nudity or sexuality is going to sell you on this piece. I'm going to deny that to you. I'm not going to deny you nudity because I'm going to be blunt about it. If I'm on a porn set, I'm more interested in how these characters divide up the food run, who gets what sandwich, than I am in them fucking. And that, at the moment that I start to indulge myself in the exploitive process of exhibition, I'm lost. I've forgotten why I was telling the story in the first place. So the trick is, I'm here now, and fuck your expectations. I have to basically find out who these people are and where they can be revealed as people. And so I can probably do more business with them in between the shots of porn than I can with the actual porn.
It's that old investigative journalist instinct that you have. Follow the sandwich.
Follow the sandwich. As many a great investigative reporter have said.
I'm interested in character and how you develop it. We had Matt Weiner of Mad Men on our show, and he told us that at the outset, he always goes into the writer's room and demand that everyone in it, quote, take the risk of doing the extreme thing, the embarrassing thing, the thing that's in their subconscious. What instructions do you give your collaborators before you mind meld?
The rule when we're doing, because I'm sort of the realist school, whatever that is, either this happened in this world that we've created, in this universe, or it could have happened, and maybe it did happen, it was rumored to have happened, or it didn't happen, but we know from all of the forces involved and all of the chronology and all of the research we've done, it could have happened to this character. And if you can't answer affirmatively to one of those, then we can't do it. So I'm going the opposite way. I'm going like, no. We know the history of porn in New York. We know what happened when, 1971, 72. We know that this was plausible. That isn't plausible. We know where the money went. We know who would have been involved, who wouldn't have been involved. Stay within that parameter. I'm much more interested in arguing the reality, even if it's a fictional show. So that can be crippling dramatically. But you know what? I don't care.
And so as a realist, in this era of dragon, zombie, vampire dominance, you make shows about racial segregation, about the reconstruction of musical communities after natural devastation, about the fight to build low-income scattered site housing, the Capitol Hill process. You revel in ordinaria. You revel.
Ordinaria?
In ordinaria. Yeah.
Quotidian bullshit.
Ordinaria.com.
Quotidia.
Quotidia. TV that should never have made its way onto the television set.
That's the best kind of TV for me. This shouldn't have been a television show. If you say that about something I've written, I'm like, thank you. Thank you.
Do you, in other aspects of your life, do you take pleasure in getting into fights with one hand behind your back? Is that just who you are?
Yes. I like fighting. I like arguing. I don't consider arguing until somebody gets ad hominem or gets like vicious about in some sort of weird personal way, unless somebody gets emotional. Arguing ideas, if it follows the path of clean rhetoric, I love an argument. I'll argue for hours on like, yes, that's true, but also this, and here's another fact, and and a guy comes back to me. That kind of argument will often change or ameliorate my viewpoints. There's very little of that left in the world. There's very few people who are rigorous about their rhetoric. I mean, our entire political culture exists on ad hominem and hyperbole. So, like, there's a lot of bad arguments to be had. And I'm happy to end those with, you're blocked, go fuck yourself. But whenever you get in a good argument, that's like, oh, this is tasty. And by the way, I may end up, keep it up, because I may end up being convinced of something you're saying. But there's precious little of it.
You told me something beautiful before we came on air. You told me that you like Ireland because the ethos there is to, as you take a swig of Guinness, hate plausibly.
Hate plausibly. Well, the Irish are famously literate. They are educated and always have been, and in command of a language not their own. And then even better, they know how to carry a grudge across centuries. So
That's why I love the Irish.
If there's a difference between them and the Jews, it's negligible. They're basically the Jews of Europe. And so from the moment I landed in Ireland when I was 24, 25 years old, I was like, I get it. I get you guys. This is like this. I feel like I was a place I understood. In fact, I remember getting off the boat and going to a place in Wexford, and within 20 minutes feeling like,
You're in your Jerusalem.
yeah, I felt like I was perfectly at home.
Romantic diasporists unite. Other than your own work, are there TV series that you look at and you say, yeah, I respect that?
There's one that I always champion because I think it never got its due. A Canadian show called Slings and Arrows. Did you ever see it?
Tonight, I'm going to see it.
It's okay. I love that you haven't seen it because you're obviously a fan of good narrative on television. And this is me doing the Lord's work. This was a show. It ran for 3 seasons. Each season was 6 episodes, very short. The conceit of it is a Shakespeare, basically a repertory company in Toronto. And each season they're producing a play.
About police corruption and misogyny.
No. A Shakespearean play. So, yeah, maybe, but maybe, but I haven't read all my Shakespeare lately. I may have missed that play.
Shakespeare is also very meta.
Yeah, I may have missed that Shakespeare, but one season they do Macbeth, one season they do Hamlet, one season they do Lear. The brilliance of the piece is that what's going on in the play is going on backstage. So if Hamlet's the play, they're running Hamlet backstage. Like the old artistic director of the theater is haunting the new artistic director, and he's a ghost. And he's basically saying, avenge me, avenge my work. It's like the meta of it. It's magnificent writing. It's writing that makes me completely envious. It's very smart, and it never got its due because it came from Canada.
Did you ever watch Gomorrah on Sundance?
Yes, Gomorrah is very good.
I think it's the single greatest non-David Simon production I've watched in the last 12 months.
Very good.
It's television that's made by David Simon.
Yeah, no, very good television. But I knew you'd know Gomorrah, but you don't know Slings and Arrows.
I've got to say, when we've discovered everything, what more is there to live? Then we will have no more shits left to give. When I think about you, I think about something that you often say. And you said last time you were here with me.
Soon we'll be dead.
Please God, that's true.
That's my motto. Soon we'll be dead.
I love it. Why?
Soon we'll be dead.
Why?
Come on.
Yeah.
Green light this and give me $60 million because soon we'll be dead. I have punctuated so many pleas.
It's the ultimate leverage.
To network execs with soon we'll be dead. Yeah. Come on. Soon we'll be dead.
It's the ultimate leverage.
Yeah.
It's the only leverage I've got. But you've said to me, The Wire is dissent. I want to know, does it annoy you, really, that many people who love it love the entertainment value? They rank their favourite seasons. They debate whether Omar is cooler than Stringer.
If Omar went up against a dragon, who would win?
Yeah.
I mean, that shit.
And they don't derive the social message or the need for activism on the back of it.
No. Yeah, what are you going to do with those people? What are you going to do with them? Hunt them down. I don't know what to do with that. I mean, listen, the world's going one way, people going another. World's going one way, people are going another. I have to say, we live in an age of Donald Trump. My country has gone right into the shitter. My governance is that of viciousness and incompetence. And I don't think the American populace is becoming more educated and more aware. I think we're going the opposite direction. I think
what does it
we're
drive
vulnerable.
you to do, David? I mean, my favourite First World War poet, Wilfred Owen, once said, "All the poet can do is warn." Do you relate to that?
This is all I know how to do is tell stories. It's all I knew how to do when I was a reporter. It's all I know how to do now. So like the moment where I have to do something else is a wasted moment. I only know how to do this. It's all I've trained for. It's all I've attended to. What are you going to do?
Do you feel more compelled now? The darkness that we've all descended into.
I'm becoming more blunt. I'm becoming more blunt. I find myself in my daily speech, in my daily demeanor, my political stances, becoming angrier because of what's happening to my country. I try not to let that bleed over into my characterizations when I'm writing, because at some point, if a character were to speak to you on screen as I'm speaking to you now, it would be terrible drama.
But do you feel a need to make things that are more urgent, more contemporary, more now?
No, because sometimes by looking back, you can nail the present by looking at the past. The Yonkers piece, Show Me a Hero, was everything about our current racial dynamic, about the hypersegregation that defines my country. But if you'd have addressed it now, if you'd have done something about, for example, Charlottesville, it's too fraught. It's too. You go back and you walk into the obscure moment of Yonkers in 1988, and what was about to happen with building a few hundred units of public housing there, and all of a sudden people can take a breath and absorb it in a different way, if they're willing. On the other hand, if they're basically going, Yonkers 1988, I don't give a damn, then you lost them anyway. But there is something to be said by walking away from the immediate and going back and taking a breath in some other realm and then bringing it forward and saying, see?
Show Me a Hero is still going on all over Westchester.
Oh, exactly, the next town up. In fact, one of the guys they thought of giving HUD to, they gave it to Carson, so it's not as if they didn't butcher it in a fresh and wonderful way. But the guy they were thinking of giving it to is the guy who's fighting the battle in Tarrytown and in Mount Vernon and elsewhere. Like, we didn't learn anything, so we're going to fight the same stupid battle of us against them and bleed ourselves dry instead of commit to a shared future.
You once told me I'm from a different planet called journalism. It's what you did. Your career journey in your 30s.
That's what I trained for.
You changed your identity. You were a police reporter. You put in the grind. You wrote your books, Homicide, The Corner. You were able to learn a whole new set of skills within television. But there's a current political reality. Does it make the journalist inside of David Simon wish that you could jump back into the news game, compete alongside, against the David Farentholds, the Maggie Habermans?
They're doing good work. I'm actually proud of mainstream media for, after I think failing to be sufficiently discerning about the new forces that were arrayed against truth in the last election cycle, and becoming lost in sort of either or tit for tat journalism that was no longer effective against that level of hyperbole and mendacity. I'm proud of journalism for post-election finally sort of picking itself up by its hind legs and saying, you know what, you lie to us on this scale and we have to fight. And I think if you look at, not all of it, but
which bylines?
A good chunk. Well, certainly Farenthold, Haberman. There are many other people for ProPublica and Mother Jones. And you look at what's coming out now, whether or not people are conditioned to accepting lies or whether they're even listening anymore is an open question. I think the American populace right now is at its most undereducated and alienated to the point where facts may not matter. But to the extent that any people are searching for facts, I think mainstream media, the Times, the Post, these other outlets that are now demanding that facts prevail on a daily basis and being belligerent about it, I think in a way, mainstream media has solved the existential crisis they had going into the election. It's like, we know what we're here for. We know where we have to stand and fight. Not just for us, but for the Republic. So, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, it must be exhilarating on one level. Not exhilarating in the sense that they still haven't solved the revenue stream problem, post-digital.
Huge problem.
Huge problem. But at least everyone goes to work at the New York Times and the Washington Post right now, and half a dozen other places, knowing why they get up in the morning. Yeah, I'd love to have a taste of that. It was some of the most fun I had as a grown-up, was being a newspaper reporter. But at the same time, HBO's given me this platform to argue politics in a different way and to do it as a dramatist. And it's a weird thing, which is that on a badly watched show that I do, 1.5 million people watch it in a given week, on something that has a terrible rating in terms of television. When you consider that a nonfiction narrative, a book, if it sells 100,000 copies, is a bestseller.
Huge book.
Right, it's a huge bestseller. The economy of scale is so different that, I'm sorry, this is a crack pipe that I can't walk away from right now. So,
there is one way that you've remained a great writer, I believe. You're known within the television industry as a great memo writer, David Simon. To get HBO on board with your first series, you famously wrote what you called a begging ass memo.
Begging ass?
Yeah, to program bosses. President of HBO said he's quit with the incendiary memo. I think he puts as much into those written pleas as he does into writing.
They don't work as much
characters.
anymore.
They don't.
Like the first round, the first few.
Yeah.
By the time I managed to get The Wire renewed for season 4 and season 5, because it was canceled twice, I think I'd shot my bolt with most HBO executives. They were like, they saw it coming. At this point. It's the Simon memo.
We've got a young audience listening to this. Can you describe the art and strategy behind the right way to write begging ass memos in the workplace?
First, you appeal to people's morality, which is exhilarating if you work in the entertainment industry because nobody's ever speaking in those terms. So the idea that, by renewing this show, God and the Republic are in your hands. Now you've got their attention, because a moment ago they just thought they were just a couple of schmucks, with offices on Wilshire Boulevard. Then the next thing you do is say, and you will get credit for it, if not here, then in the afterlife. Now you've got their attention. And then finally you explain how somehow this will reward them down the road with DVD sales or future loyalty from audience and commitment.
Twin tier, loftiness and pragmatic.
Right. And then you wrap your arms around their legs and you say, please, I'll do your babysitting and I'll clean your windows. And
I'll give you my recipe for lemon meringue pie.
That's right.
To wrap this up, and in honor of Jewish New Year, talking about morality, which is fast approaching, I want to ask you to tell a story that you told me that I can't stop thinking about. Can you just tell us your Mike Epstein, Washington Senator story? It's a great end of Jewish New Year story. I adore
Rosh
it.
Hashanah?
I'm giving you my Mike Epstein.
Look at you have a Mike
baseball
Epstein
card.
card. Look at him. Beautiful left-handed swing. Michael Peter Epstein. Are you listening, Mike? Are you out there? You out there in Denver? So when we talked about this before, had I done the story for Sports Illustrated?
Had not.
But you've seen it since then.
I have seen the story.
Okay, I finally convinced him. So when I was about 10 years old, I have a memory of praying that Mike Epstein would hit a home run with the bases loaded. He played for the Washington Senators, my home baseball
Who
team.
you adored.
I believed that it was on opening day and it was against a great pitcher named Vida Blue. It was a magnificent pitcher.
Legend.
Legend. I prayed and I said, dear God, if you let Mike Epstein, my favorite player, super Jew, a Jewish power-hitting first baseman, what are the chances? If you let him hit this home run, I will never skip Hebrew school for the rest of my natural days. Crack, home run. This is what I know is true. This is the memory I have that is so specific. My arms are raised. I am in the boys' bathroom of Rock Creek Forest Elementary. I am looking in the oxidized mirror of the lower wing bathroom, and I am jumping up and down cheering at this home run. And I look at my face and I realize what I have just promised.
Like Cat Stevens.
Is that what happened to him?
Yep, he was going to drown in the ocean. And he said, God, if you save me, I'll give you my life. I'll dedicate my life to you. In a way, and he did. But you decided to go another route.
Not an album as good as the first two ever since. I was like, oh my God, what if I promised? So for like 2-3 weeks, I didn't skip Hebrew school. And then it was 2-3 weeks. God's really not going to hold me to that insanity. So I started skipping Hebrew school.
God's moved on.
Boom. Old Testament God, he does not fuck around. The next thing I know, Mike Epstein's traded to the Oakland A's. Your favorite player, gone. Okay, I'm like, yeah, that that doesn't necessarily mean that God's intervened. It's just unlucky. The next thing I know, end of the season, the entire Washington Senators baseball team picks up and moves to Texas and becomes the Texas Rangers. Clearly, the Old Testament God is not fucking around.
The smiter.
The smiter.
Yeah.
There has been some smiting going on.
He's a Baltimore Orioles fan.
So, like, I know this in my heart. I did this. I caused this.
Yeah.
I caused this.
Of course you did.
I go to college. I stopped rooting for baseball. My team's gone. I go to the Baltimore Sun in 1983. I get a job there. They win the World Series. Literally, like, I'm just moving into my place. And they're beating the Phillies for the last World Series. And then from then on, it's like a desert for the Baltimore. It's like, and now anything I touch baseball-wise is being destroyed because I have messed with Yahweh.
Mike Messina, your fault.
Yeah, everything.
For the Yankees.
Everything. The kid with the mayor with the glove, with the fly ball, and I am responsible for all of this.
Yeah. Brady Anderson getting off the steroids.
Oh,
your
my
fault.
God. Everything. So, at some point, team comes back to Washington. They can't win. Orioles can't win. And I realize what I need to do. Is Mike Epstein still alive? Where is this guy? He and I got to get right with God. Now, why does Mike Epstein have to get right with God? And I'll tell you. I know you were ready to ask, and I will tell you. He had 20 home runs that year. I caused one of the 20. I made that guy, that lunch meat pitcher, hang a curveball.
Inarguable.
So, if he has 19 home runs that year instead of 20, does he get traded to Oakland to protect Reggie Jackson in the lineup, batting fourth? 19, maybe they look down the depth chart, they go 19, 20. Guy's got 20 home runs. Let's hire this guy. So he gets traded to Oakland. He gets a World Series ring the next year for Oakland, for the A's. So, like, he's benefited, too, from my little pact with God. So, anyway, I find him. He's living out in Denver. He's running a batting school, very noted batting school with his son. And he listens to me on the phone, and he says, "Are you insane?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Well, think about it. This is a little bit egotistical that you caused all." I go,
"It's an arguable."
I'm like, "Are you a Jew or not?" Because, like, we know what the Old Testament God can do. When,
Tower of Babel, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Just ask Lot's wife.
Lot's wife. Think about Lot's wife for a moment.
Yeah, please.
So,
think about it every day.
He says, "What do you want me to do?" I say, "You have to come over for Passover, for Pesach Seder. We have to eat the bread of affliction, the matzah. We have to march our way out of this Pharaoh's slavery and out of the wilderness of Sinai and into the promised land. You and I have to do this together. You have to come to my family's Seder." And incredibly, the guy goes, "You're insane, but okay, I'll do it." At which point, and this is true, this was like 5 years earlier, my brother-in-law had a boating accident, sadly, and he was fatally injured. I mean, he lingered for a while, but he was fatally injured with a brain injury. And it happened like 3 weeks before Passover. So I had to call Mr. Epstein back and say, "Listen, it can't happen this year. My family's really distraught. We're not in any position." 5 years later, I tell this story to an editor at Sports Illustrated. He says, "You got to get him to do something. We got to do this story." So I called Mike Epstein back. At this point, he's like, "It's you again?" I'm like, No. This time I'm really serious. And it was around Yom Kippur. It was the Day of Atonement.
The Day of Atonement.
The Day of Atonement, Kol Nidre.
Yeah.
All vows.
Yeah.
So
most serious day of the year for forgiveness.
Got to ask for forgiveness. Mike, you got to come east. We got to go to a Washington Nationals game together. We got to go and pray to God for forgiveness. He's like, "What do I have to forgive?" I said, hey, 19 home runs? Come on. Look at that World Series ring. Think about what I did for you. So he's laughing. He's like rolling his eyes, but we go. He comes back. They're going to have Mike Epstein night at the stadium in Washington. They're going to have Mike Epstein night. They have a jersey and a hat with like the W. It's a shin. It's the Hebrew letter. Like they literally are like going all out for Mike Epstein because they want to get this curse off them.
Yeah.
Game is rained out. Out.
Biblical
flood. Mike Epstein's staring at the tarp. We're in the dugout.
Yeah.
That night he goes, "God is really pissed off at you, Simon. God is really pissed off at you." So like Mike Epstein night is rained out. The next night, knowing that God is still angry, we go, I pray my balls off. kol nidreing like nobody's business. I am throwing prayer, petitional prayer, like I've never thrown it in my life. Epstein's standing beside me at this synagogue outside of Washington. He knows the liturgy. He's doing his part. We get outside. He goes, "You think it took?" I'm like, "I don't know." So, we go out. The next day, Papelbon throws that punch at Bryce Harper
Yep.
in the dugout,
Had it coming.
which was pretty much God's saying, "I'm not done with you yet." So, I like at this point, the Orioles and the Nationals, neither team has now pulled it out yet. I don't know what else to do. I've offered up a perfect sacrifice, a perfect sacrificial lamb. I made Mike Epstein travel from Denver all the way to Washington. We tasted of affliction. We asked for forgiveness. God, and I'm speaking to you, Yahweh.
He listens.
She
listens. She listens.
Let my people go. Let my people go.
I can just see baseball bats being turned into asps the next time that you are in that dugout. I've got to tell you, I'm going to be listening to this podcast and this podcast only all Yom Kippur, and I suggest you listeners do the same. I've got to say, it is a joy to be with you, David Simon. It really is. A man who's achieved such success without appearing to indulge in too many of the trappings, the private jet, the helipad. You famously avoid Hollywood. You've transformed yourself, though, professionally, without transforming yourself from a core value perspective. I've got to ask you, to wrap up, what would newspaperman David Simon, 22-year-old David Simon, think of 57-year-old David Simon?
What a dick. There you have it.
And what would David Simon, 57-year-old David Simon, say to 22-year-old David Simon if you met?
I'll get over it.
Would you ask him to join the writer's room?
No. No. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll talk in about 8-9 years.
Oh, David Simon uses hate plausibly on young David Simon. It's an honour and a joy to be with you. You are an inspiration for so many great friends of our pod. The Deuce premieres on Sunday, September 10th, 9 p.m. This Sunday, if you're listening and watching with a towel around your thighs, it's on HBO. We wish you a happy new year. Shana Tova, health, happiness.
Lishana Tova, and to all of you out there, remember, for the sake of humanity, hate plausibly. Hate plausibly.
Godspeed.